Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We are holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Vav. We will be learning today, I hope, we're beginning on Mem Vav Amud Aleph, but I hope to get down through at least part of Mem Zayin Amud Aleph to try and catch up on some lost ground that we lost over Yom Tov. So we begin today on Mem Vav Amud Aleph with the beginning of Siman Tov Kuf Ayin in the Mechaber. Says the Mechaber, Tov Kuf Ayin, Din Chanukah U Purim, the halachas that pertain to Chanukah, Purim, V'yamim she'ein oimrim behem tchina, and other days when we do not recite Tachnun. I'm actually saying this share today on a day that we don't say Tachnun, being that it's still Chodesh Nisan. Shenifkeshu b'soich yemei nidrei tainus. So what happened over here is somebody made a neder to fast a certain amount of days, and amongst those days, there happens to be some days when you don't say Tachnun, or maybe Chanukah, Purim, other days. What's the halacha? How do you comport yourself? You made a neder to fast, and now suddenly it's Chanukah, and Chanukah fell out during the days that you're supposed to fast. What do you do? Ubay Gimel Seifim, and here we have 3 Seifim. Says the Mechaber in Sif Aleph, Yachid shekibel alav tainus kach v'kach yomim. You have an individual who took upon himself to fast a certain amount of days. So let's say it was Rosh Chodesh Kislev, and somebody made a neder, and he said, I'm going to fast 40 days. Well, if he made a neder to fast 40 days on Rosh Chodesh Kislev, he's going to have a problem, because in those days that he said he's going to fast, you have Chanukah, you have Rosh Chodesh, and those are days that you can't fast. So what do? The first thing, let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Aleph. The Mechaber says that this halacha that he's writing pertains to a yachid, to an individual. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Aleph, Yachid shekibel alav tainus. We're speaking here strictly about an individual. The iluim gazru tainus al hatzibur be'eretz Yisrael. If we would be speaking about a real bona fide tainus tzibur, that they were geyser a tainus in Eretz Yisrael, v'hischilul his anois, and they began to fast, ve'era behem elu hayamim, and now amongst the days that they were geyser to fast falls out one of these days, Chanukah, Purim, Rosh Chodesh, etc. Chal gzerasam b'di'eved. B'di'eved, the gzera, the decree is chal, it's in force, and they would have to fast. So let's say this was happening in Eretz Yisrael. Let's say in Eretz Yisrael there were geyser at tainus because of a drought. There's a drought, and now they're being mispaled to the Rabbanu Shalom, and they're making a tainus that there should be rain. So they were geyser at tainus, and they didn't take a good look at the calendar before they were geyser the tainus. And now they realize that Chanukah is going to be one of the days that they were geyser. If they already began to fast, it doesn't mean that they already began to fast on Chanukah. Let's say they made a gzera that for the next Monday, Thursday, Monday, we're going to fast because there's a drought in Eretz Yisrael. And they didn't realize that Thursday was already Chanukah, and they began to fast already on Monday. So they began to fast the series of Tanesim that they were geyser. Now, since it's B'di'eved, since they already made the gzera and they already began to fast, they have to keep the fast, even though it's on Chanukah. So that's why the Mishnah Berurah says here, the iluim gazru tainus al hatzibur be'eretz Yisrael. If we would be speaking about a case where there were geyser at tainus on the public in Eretz Yisrael, v'hischilul his anois, and they already began to fast the series of tanesim that they were geyser, ve'era behem elu hayamim, and now they realize that these days like Chanukah, Purim, etc., fall out during the series of tanesim that they were geyser, chal gzeirasam b'di'eved. That gzera for the tainus is chal, it's in force, and they must fast. But that does not apply to a yachid. If an individual took upon himself to fast, and now it comes out these days during the time he was supposed to fast, then the halacha is different. So now let's go back to the beginning of Sif Aleph here in the Mechaber. Yachid shekibel alav tainus kach v'kach yamim. Now that we know that we're speaking only about an individual. So an individual made a neder. He was makabel tainus. Well, I don't want to use the words he made a neder. Let's teach the Mechaber the way he writes it. Yachid shekibel alav tainus. An individual who accepted upon himself a tainus, kach v'kach yamim, for a certain amount of days. So it's like the case that I gave you. on Rosh Chodesh Kislev, he accepted upon himself that he's going to fast for the next 40 days. Ve'eru bahem, and now it falls out during the 40 days that he accepted upon himself to fast, Shabbosos. If you accept upon yourself to fast the next 40 days, there's a lot of Shabbosos during those 40 days. V'yamim tovim, and if he did it on Rosh Chodesh Kislev, you're going to have Chanukah. If he did it on Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan, so now you're going to have Sukkot. Oy Rosh Chodesh, if you accept upon yourself to fast 40 days, there's going to be a Rosh Chodesh during those days. Chanukah, if you did it on Rosh Chodesh Kislev, you're going to hit Chanukah. Oy Purim, maybe he did it on Rosh Chodesh Adar, so now he's going to hit Purim. Oy Erev Yom HaKippurim, or Erev Yom Kippur maybe falls out during the days that he said he was going to fast. So now the Mechaber says the halacha is going to depend on how he made the Kabbalah's Tainus. What manner of speech did he use when he made the Kabbalah's Tainus? Im kiblu b'lashayin Kabbalah's Tainus ba'alma, if he made a simple Kabbalah's Tainus. The Berurah says over here, what does that mean that he made a simple Kabbalah's Tainus? The Berurah says in Eis Aleph, Tahainu shekibloi b'mincha. He was davening mincha, and he made a regular Kabbalah's Tainus. He said, Harei alai a Tainus for the next 40 days. So he made a simple Kabbalah's Tainus. So im kibla b'lashon Kabbalah's Tainus ba'alma, if he made a simple Kabbalah's Tainus, einoi tzarech HaTorah. He does not need any kind of HaTorah's nedarim, and he will not fast on those days. So he will not fast Shabbos, he will not fast Rosh Chodesh, he will not fast Chanukah, Purim, or Yom Tov, Erev Yom Kippur, even though he was Mekabel Tainus, and he said, I'm going to fast for the next 40 days. Any of these days fall out during those 40 days, he doesn't have to fast. His Kabbalah's HaTainus does not have the power to force upon himself a Tainus that he cannot fast. Those are days that you're not allowed to fast. So because his simple Kabbalah's HaTainus doesn't have the power to be doicha, the halacha that you don't fast on those days. Says the Mishnah Berurah's cotton bays, ain't tzarech HaTorah. He does not require HaTorah's nedarim. The ain't kayach Kabbalah's chal klal al yom zeh, because his Kabbalah's HaTainus is not chal. It doesn't take effect at all on these days where you're not allowed to fast. Vayin b'siman taf yud ches b'Mishnah Berurah sif cotton zayin. The Chavetz Chaim sends us back to Siman Taf Yud Ches, and Mishnah Berurah is cotton zayin. Masha kasav nusham, what he wrote over there. And if you take a look in the Dirshu, footnote number 3, they bring this down. It says over here, Shekasav Sham, the Mishnah Berurah wrote over there, Lagabi Hachiyav Lefraya Tainus. Do you have to pay back the Tainus? So again, this person went ahead and he made a Kabbalah's HaTainus that he's going to fast for the next 40 days. Now, in those 40 days, you have Shabbosos and maybe Yomim Tovim. We're saying the halacha is, if he made a simple Kabbalah's HaTainus, he does not have to fast on those Shabbosos, and he does not have to fast on those Yomim Tovim. But now, what happens to his Kabbalah's HaTainus? His Kabbalah's HaTainus was that he was going to fast 40 days. So if you knock out the Shabbosos and the Yom Tovim, maybe now he's only going to fast 30 days. Does he owe 10 days? Does he have to make up those 10 days and fast a different 10 days to make up for those lost 10 days? So he says over here that it depends. The only time he has to make them up, the only time he does not have to make them up is if when he made the neder, the Kabbalah's HaTainus, he made it on specific days. Kegoin sheni v'chamishi shall kol hashana. Let's say somebody said, I am going to make a Kabbalah's Tainus, I'm accepting upon myself to fast Monday and Thursday for the entire year. Okay, there are Rosh Chodashim that fall out on Monday, Chanukah might fall out on a Thursday, Purim might fall out on a Monday. So in that case, the ira behem yoyma aser b'tainus, if it comes out that there's a Monday and a Thursday where you're not allowed to fast, leichala kabbalasai, his Kabbalah is not in effect, ve'ein tzarich lefraya yom achar tachtav, and he doesn't have to pay back another day. So this person said, I'm going to fast Bahab the whole year. Excuse me. And now there are Mondays and Thursdays that he cannot fast. He doesn't have to pay those Tanesim back because his Kabbalah was never Chal. Aval, however, im kibel alav bistam, if he made a generalized Kabbalah Satanis, kach v'kach yomim l'hisanois, and he said, I'm going to fast X amount of days, like in the case I gave, where he said I'm going to fast 40 days, tzarich ledaleg al oisayim, now he has to skip the days that he's not allowed to fast, or lahashlim lacher mikain, and he has to pay those days back by fasting on another day. Because in this case, he said 40 days, and he's not fasting 40 days, so he has to make up the 10 lost days. In the first case, he said, I'm going to fast Bahab the whole year. He didn't make a number of days. He said Bahab. So he has to fast the days of Bahab that he's allowed to fast. The days of Bahab that he's not allowed to fast, his Kabbalah Satanis was never chal on those days. Okay. So, the first halacha over here of the Mechaber was, you went ahead and you said you made a simple Kabbalah Satanis that you're going to fast X amount of days, and during those days, a day that you're not allowed to fast fell out. So the Mechaber said, if it was a simple Kabbalah Satanis, your Kabbalah Satanis wasn't chal, and you don't need any kind of HaTorah nedarim, and that's it. You're not going to fast on those days. However, continues the Mechaber, second line, last word, V'im kibloi b'l'shayin harei olai. But if when he made this Kabbalah Satanis, he made a bona fide neder, he made a real neder, as the Mishnah Berurah is going to explain, what does that mean? He said, harei olai achilas yoim ploini kainim. The eating of that day, the eating, for, let's say he said, harei olai achilas arboim yoim. The eating of the next 40 days should be to me kikainam, like a carbon. A carbon is asur b'hana. So now he just went ahead and he made a bona fide neder. He said that the eating, the food of the next 40 days should be to me like a carbon. It should be asur to me. Oh, he made a real neder. In that case, the Mechaber says, if he made a Kabbalah in the format of a bona fide neder, now he needs to be matir neder in order to be allowed to eat on those days. You see, if you make a neder, the neder is going to be chal even on a Yom Tov, even on a Chanukah, even on a Purim. So if you made a real neder that you're going to fast for the next 40 days, and Chanukah falls out during those 40 days, now you have a real problem. You made a real neder. Now you're not allowed to fast on Chanukah. So what do you have to do? You have to be matir neder. If you don't be matir neder, you're going to have to fast, even though it's Chanukah. But you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to be matir neder so that you should be able to eat. V'yiftach pacharota. How do you go be matir neder? So you go to the chacham. The chacham is, you need a pesach and a charota. You need a pesach, an opening, in order to nullify the neder. And you need charota. You need to show regret that you ever made that neder. Sheyoymar loy, the chacham will say to the one who made the neder, ilu samta el libcha, if you would have realized sheyeru behem elo ayamim, that these days of Chanukah or Yom Tov or what have you were going to fall out during the next 40 days, loy hayisa noider, you would have never made such a neder, right? And the guy says, yeah, I would have never made such a neder, I didn't realize. Umatir loy, and then you're matir the neder for him. So again, the Mechaber said over here, a person was makabel tainus to fast a certain amount of days, and now during those days fell out a day that you're not allowed to fast. If he was makabel the tainus with a simple Kabbalah Satanis, so then his Kabbalah Satanis is not powerful enough to be doicha the fact that he's not allowed to fast on those days, and there's no problem. He won't fast on those days. But now the Mechaber says, if you made a bona fide neder, the neder is powerful enough. And now you can't eat on those days. But you have to eat on those days. You're not allowed to fast. So you got to go and you got to be matir neder. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Ois Katan Gimel. B'l'shayin harei alai. If you made a bona fide neder using the format of harei alai, Pirush, what does that mean that he said harei alai? Sha'amar, where the noider said, harei alai achilas yoim ploini kainim. The eating of this and this day, or the eating of this series of days, should be to me like a kainam. The word kainam is another way. It's another way of saying carbon, and a carbon is asur b'hana. Umishum de neder chal afilu al dvar mitzvah. The reason this is problematic is because a neder is even chal on a dvar mitzvah. For instance, let's say it's Sukkos, and somebody goes ahead and he makes a neder, and he says, Harei alai lulav kikoinim. The lulav should be to me like a carbon. Well, now, even though there's a mitzvah say to take a lulav, he can't take the lulav, because he just asered the lulav onto himself like a carbon. He's not allowed to pick up that lulav. He's not allowed to have any anah. He can't gain any benefit from that lulav. The neder oiser achefetz alav, because when you make a neder, what you're doing is you're making the object, the chefetz, aser to you. It's very nice that you have a chiv to shake a lulav, but you don't have a lulav to shake, because you see that lulav over there? That lulav is aser to you. You're not allowed to pick up that lulav. You made that lulav to you like a carbon. So you made that lulav aser ba'anah. So the neder is chal even on a dvar mitzvah. Ve'ein shum tzivoy ala chefetz. The neder could be chal on the object because the object is not encumbered by a mitzvah. The lulav does not have a mitzvah to be shaken. The lulav is just a tree branch. So when you make a lulav and you put an isser on the object, the isser could take effect on the object. Aval b'shvua, but if a person would make a shvua, shenishba lehisanois b'yamim elu, person makes a shvua. He swears that he's not going to eat on Chanukah. Elu ein chal. The shvua can't be chal. The chamavur b'siv gimel, like we're going to see soon in siv gimel, mishum de shvua oiser nafshei al cheftza. When you make a shvua, somebody makes a shvua, I swear I'm not going to eat on Chanukah. He makes a shvua. He's not putting an isser, he's not creating a prohibition on the food. He's trying to put a prohibition on himself. Now you cannot put a prohibition on yourself that you will not eat on Chanukah. Why? Because you have a tzivui that you're not allowed to fast on Chanukah. You are already commanded that you're not allowed to fast on Chanukah. So you can't make a shvua to say, I'm going to fast on Chanukah. Because your shvua cannot take effect against the commandment that you already have, that you have to eat on Chanukah because you're not allowed to fast. But when you make a neder, it's not that way. When you make a neder, you're not putting a prohibition on yourself. You're putting a prohibition on the object. You're not making a prohibition that it's aser on me to eat. What you're doing is you're asering the food. You're saying the food is aser to me. So your neder could be chal. And that's why over here, if somebody makes this Kabbalah Satainus in the format of a neder, so he makes a neder and he asers food on himself on Chanukah, that neder is chal. And now he has to go and he has to get HaTorah's Nedarim. Ais Katan Dalet Shehu Loshen Neder. The problem over here is that he used the Loshen Neder. Now the Mishnah Berurah was already very specific to us, and the Mishnah Berurah said, what do I mean by Loshen Neder? What I mean is the real bona fide format of a neder. The format of a neder is always, as we explained, you put an isser on the chefetz, on the object. Harei alai, somebody wants to make a neder that he will not gain any benefit from his smartphone. So he says, Harei ha-smartphone alai kikoinim. The smartphone should be to me like a carbon. So now he turned the smartphone into a chefetz shel isser. He turned the smartphone into a forbidden object. So he's not allowed to pick it up. That's always the format of a neder. Now here in Ais Katan Daled, the Mishnah Berurah takes it a step further. He says, Kasev Magen Avram, the Magen Avram writes, Dem Amar, Hareini noider lehisanois yom echad. Somebody says, I am making a neder to fast on a specific day. Is that called a neder? Let's say somebody says, Hareini noider lehisanois b'Chanukah. I'm making a neder that I will fast on Chanukah. So is that now considered a Kabbalah's Tainus B'Lashay neder? And now he has to go to a Chacham and be mater neder? Says the Magen Avram, no. Loy mikri neder. That's not called a neder. Because that's not the format of a neder. He didn't aser food on himself on Chanukah. He tried, I'm making a neder that I will fast. That's the format of a shvuah. You're trying to obligate yourself to do something or not to eat. but you're not answering the chayfetz. So that's not the format of a neder. That's the format of a shvuah. So the Magen Avram says, don't make a mistake by learning this mechaber. And when the mechaber says that if you're mekabel tainis b'loshen neder, you have to be mater neder, that it applies to somebody who says, hareini noider lehis anois. That's not a neder. V'lachei nagu, and therefore, the Magen Avram says, therefore the minig is, Shemi Sha'amar, somebody who says, Hareini noider lehis anois sheni v'chamishi kol yamois hashana, I'm making a neder to fast Monday and Thursday the entire year. Ein tzarech lehisanois per Rosh Chodesh. He's not required to fast if Rosh Chodesh falls out on a Monday and Thursday. Ve'ein tzarech HaTorah. And he does not need to be mater neder, because this is not called a neder. It's only called a Kabbalah's Tainis Ba'alma, and therefore it never took effect on a Monday that happens to be Rosh Chodesh. V'ayin b'Pri Megadim, v'ayin b'Yeridei, Siman Reish Rav, Sif Hey, for more details on this halacha. So if the person made a bona fide neder to be makabel tainis, then he needs hataras nedarim. V'yireh lahatir, and he should make sure to get hataras nedarim. He shouldn't say to himself, I'm too embarrassed to go to the chacham and get hataras nedarim. I just won't get hataras nedarim, and since my neder obligates me to fast on Chanukah, I guess I'm going to fast on Chanukah. No, v'yireh lahatir. He should make sure that he is mater neder, kedei shelo yiyeh mechuyev lehis, so that he should not be required to fast on Chanukah, Purim, Shabbos, Yom Tov. V'im lo yihiter v'hisana, and if he refrains from doing hataras nedarim, and he taka fasts on one of those days, tzarich lemeisav achakach tanis l'tanisai. He's going to have to fast to get kapara for fasting on that day. So if he doesn't get hataras nedarim and he fasts on Chanukah, excuse me, he's going to have to go ahead and fast another day to get kapara for the fact that he fasted on Shabbos, Yom Tov, Chanukah, Purim. The Chanal, like we saw earlier, B'Siman Tavkov Samaches Sif Hey, where we learned the halacha, if somebody fasts a Tainus Chaloim, let's say on Shabbos or on Yom Tov, he has to go fast another day to get kapara for the fact that he fasted on Shabbos or Yom Tov. Continues the Mishnah Berurah, he says, Ukishematir loy, when this person goes ahead and gets hataras nedarim. So again, let's not lose track. What was the case? Let's say the person said on Rosh Chodesh Kislev, he made a bona fide neder that he's going to fast for the next 40 days. Now he realizes that that neder obligates him to fast on Shabbos, on Rosh Chodesh, on Chanukah. He realizes he can't, so he realizes he needs hataras nedarim. When he goes to the Chacham, and the Chacham is mater neder, memela hutar kol hayamim. Now the Chacham is going to be mater his entire neder, and he's not going to have to fast at all. It's not that he's going to have to fast the days that he's allowed to fast, and he'll skip the other days. No, now he's not going to have to fast at all. And the reason for that is a halacha that we learned in Yeridei and Hilchos Nedarim, which is neder shehutar miktsasai, a neder where part of the neder was nullified, hutar kulai, the entire neder is considered wiped out. Okay. Now we continue in the Mechaber on the top of Mem Vav Amid Beis. Okay, so we had this halacha. Now, it's written a little strangely over here, the Lashon of the Mechaber, but now the Mechaber is going to bring down a Rambam, where the Rambam does not argue on the halacha that we just said. The Rambam only takes issue with one piece of it. Ula HaRambam, according to the Rambam, Misha Kibel Alav B'Lshon Neder, if somebody made a Kabbalah's Nedarim in the format of a Neder, Upagu by Shabbos v'Yamim Tovim ay Erev Yom Kippurim or Rosh Chodesh, and now during the days that he made the Neder to fast, you have Shabbos, you have days of Yom Tov, you have Erev Yom Kippur, or you have Rosh Chodesh, Chayiv Lotzum Behem Im Lo Yatiruloi. He has to fast unless he gets hataras nedarim. So far, everything is exactly as the Mechaber said previously. If you did your Kabbalah's Tainus in the format of a neder, then your Kabbalah's Tainus is in force, even on Shabbos, even on Yom Tov, even on Erev Yom Kippur, even on Rosh Chodesh. And therefore, either you have to get hataras nedarim, or if you don't get hataras nedarim, you're going to have to fast. So far, everything is exactly the way the Mechaber said. Avol, however, and this is where the Rambam makes a difference. In Paga by Chanukah Upurim, according to the Rambam, if Chanukah or Purim falls out during the series of days that you made a neder to fast, nidroi bottle. Your neder, according to the Rambam, is not in force on Chanukah or Purim, v'lo yotzim behem, and you do not have to fast on Chanukah or Purim, even if you didn't get HaTorah Dedarim. Why? Mipnei shehem midivreim, because Chanukah and Purim are derabanan, utzrichem chizuk. Since Chanukah and Purim are only midirabanan, this is a little counterintuitive. Usually we'd say it's a derabanan, so it's more kal than a daraisa. Over here is an example of where we say that something that's a derabanan is more chamor than a daraisa. You made a neder, and now your neder is going to require you to fast on Shabbos, which is a daraisa. You have to fast, unless you get a Torah Dedarim. But you made a neder, and your neder is going to require you to fast on Chanukah. You're not allowed to fast, and you don't need a Torah Dedarim, according to the Rambam. Why? Because since Chanukah and Purim are only derabanan, there's a rule that sometimes the Chachamim, on a din derabanan, they said a din derabanan needs chizuk. It needs to be strengthened. Otherwise, people might look at it and say, yeah, it's only derabanan. No big deal. So no. So the Chachamim took it even to a higher degree than a daraisa. Now the Beis Yosef asks a kasha on this. The Beis Yosef asks, how could you tell me that the Chachamim could tell somebody, you made a neder to eat on Chanukah, and your neder is not in force, and you're going to eat on Chanukah? So that means that the Chachamim are telling somebody to be over on a daraisa. Let's remember, the din of a neder is a din daraisa. It's not a derabanan on a neder. So somebody made a neder, a real bona fide neder. Harei alai achilas Chanukah kikainam. Eating on Chanukah should be to me like a carbon. That's a neder daraisa. So the neder says that he's not allowed to fast. He has an issa daraisa to go eat that food. That food is also to him like a carbon. Yet the Chachamim are saying, your neder is not chal. Why isn't it chal? Because Chanukah is a din derabanan. On Chanukah there's a din derabanan that you're not allowed to fast. And since it's a derabanan, it requires chizuk. And therefore we're going to tell you that your neder is not in place. How could the Chacham do that? The Chacham are telling you to be over an Isser Daraisa Bekum Va'aseh. The Chacham are telling you that you should actively go ahead and be over an Isser Daraisa and break your neder. Why? In order to be Mechazik Din Darabanan. How could the Chachamim do that? Usually we say that the Chachamim can only be Oiker Dvar Torah B'Sheva Al Taisa. The Chachamim could tell you passively, don't be Mekayim a Mitzvah Saseh. Passively be over an Isser for a Darabanan because of a Gzera, because of a Takana. But to be Oiker Dvar Torah B'Kum Va'aseh, the Beis Yosef asks, how could the Chachamim do that? And the answer that the Beis Yosef gives, the Beis Yosef says that sometimes when there's a din derabanan that requires chizuk, he brings rayas from Rishonim that when a din derabanan requires chizuk, then the Chachamim could be oiker divrei Torah even bekum va'aseh. Pella, the Chachamim could tell somebody to be over an issa daraisa bekum va'aseh because a din derabanan requires chizuk. So that's the Rambam. Now I just want to point out to you, let's take a look at the Bir Halacha, Dibra Maskil Ula Harambam. I told you that the Mechaber is written a little bit awkwardly here. It almost sounds like the Rambam is being chaylik, that the Rambam is arguing on the first halacha of the Mechaber. So the Bir Halacha points out, he says here, Din Zehu Gam L'Dei Rishayna. The Rambam does not argue on what the Mechaber wrote first. V'hanafkeminahu, the only difference between the Rambam and what the Mechaber wrote at the beginning of this sif is Rak b'impaga by Chanukah uPurim. There's only a nafkemina on Chanukah and Purim. The Mechaber wrote that if somebody made a neder that's going to require him to fast on Shabbos, on Yom Tov, on Rosh Chodesh, on Chanukah, on Purim, or on Erev Yom Kippur, so the neder is chal, and he has to get HaTorah Dedarim. Comes along the Rambam, and the Rambam says, true, but not by Chanukah and Purim. By Chanukah and Purim, the neder is not chal, because Chanukah and Purim are D'Rabbanan, and the D'Rabbanan requires chizuk. Okay, there's no Mishnah Berurah on this. Let's go weiter into the Ramah. Says the Ramah, Hago, v'haminig kasfara harishayna. The minig follows the first opinion, that the Mechaber wrote, not the Rambam. So somebody makes a neder, and even if Chanukah Upurim fall out during the series of his Tanesim, he shouldn't fast, he should get HaTorah Nedarim. If he does not get HaTorah Nedarim, he's going to have to fast. And if he has to fast, he's going to fast another fast to get kapara for fasting. Now, continues the Ramah. The Ramah says, Misha nadar lehisanois sach yomim. Somebody makes a neder, I'm going to fast for the next 40 days. V'amar chutz mi Yom Tov. So this person was a little bit smarter. He didn't go ahead and check the calendar, but when he made his neder, he said, I'm making a neder, and this is the bona fide neder, harei alai achilas yom ploini kekainim. So somebody made a bona fide neder to fast a series of days. He didn't check the calendar, but he said chutz mi Yom Tov, with the exception of Yom Tov. So this guy got up on Rosh Chodesh Kislev. Harei alai achilas arba'im yom kekainim. The eating of the next 40 days should be to me like a carbon, chutz mi Yom Tov, with the exception of Yom Tov. Okay, what's the deal now? Do we say that by saying except for Yom Tov, what did he knock out? So if Sukkot fell out during his series of Tanesim, we understand that by saying except for Yom Tov, he knocked out Sukkot. We understand saying except for Yom Tov would knock out Pesach, it would knock out Shavuos. But does it knock out Chanukah? Is Chanukah called Yom Tov? When you meet your friend on Chanukah, do you say good Yom Tov? Does it knock out Purim? Is Purim called Yom Tov? Is Rosh Chodesh called Yom Tov? Says the Ramah, Misha nadar lehisanai sach yomim. Somebody made a neder to fast a certain amount of days. V'amar chutz mi Yom Tov, and he said except for Yom Tov. Ein Chanukah uPurim bechlal. The Chanukah and Purim are not included in his exception. If he said except for Yom Tov, he does not knock out Chanukah. And therefore, Chanukah is included in his neder, and he's going to have to fast unless he gets HaTorah Nedarim. Because Chanukah is not called a Yom Tov, and Purim is not called a Yom Tov. V'im amar shadaitoi hoya aleihem. But if the person says, no, when I said except for Yom Tov, I knew what I was doing. I knew that I was making this neder on Rosh Chodesh Kislev, and when I said except for Yom Tov, I meant to include Chanukah. Then holchem acharov. Then the Rashba says, we follow what he says his intent was. If he says that his intent was to make an exception for Chanukah and Purim, then it is. So default, if a person just says except for Yom Tov, and then they ask him, when you said except for Yom Tov, did you realize that Chanukah fell out during your Tanesim? And he says, oh no, I didn't realize that. Yeah, but I said except for Yom Tov. Sorry, Charlie, Chanukah is not called Yom Tov. So now you need HaTorah Nedarim. But if the person says, they come to me, did you realize that you said you're going to fast the next 40 days? Did you realize that Chanukah falls out during the next 40 days? Yeah, of course I realized. That's why I said except for Yom Tov. Do you realize that Chanukah is not really called a Yom Tov? Oh, that's what I meant. What did you think I meant? I know that there's no other Yom Tov that falls out in Kislev. That's what I meant. I meant except for Yom Tov. I meant Chanukah. So then the Rashba says, we listen to him, even though generally speaking, Chanukah is not called Yom Tov. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Vav, Upurim. Chanukah and Purim are not called Yom Tov. So if he says except for Yom Tov, min hastam, he does not mean to accept Chanukah and Purim. She'ein elo yomim nikran Yom Tov, because these days are not colloquially called Yom Tov. V'huadin Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh is now also not included in his exception, because Rosh Chodesh is not called Yom Tov. Aval Chalamoyed mikri Yom Tov. But if Chalamoyed would fall out during the days of his Tanesim, that is included in Yom Tov. Ois Katan Zayin, we brought down from the Rashba, if he says that his intent was to accept Purim and Chanukah, we follow what he says. Pirish ve'ein mechuyev lehisanis. We follow what he says, and therefore Chanukah and Purim are included in his exception, and therefore he's not mechuyev to fast on Chanukah and Purim, even if he doesn't get HaTorah Nedarim. Continues the Ramah, and the Ramah says, Aval, however, Erev Yom Kippurim bechlal. If somebody makes a neder to fast before Erev Yom Kippur, and he says except for Yom Tov, Erev Yom Kippur is included in his exception. Erev Yom Kippur is called Yom Tov. V'hachi nog, and this is the minig. The minig is to follow the Deir Rishona, not the Rambam. These words, v'hachi nog, goes back on the beginning of the Sif, that the minig is to follow the Deir Rishona of the Mechaber, that if somebody is makabel tainus in the format of a neder, his neder is in force even on Chanukah and Purim, and therefore he would need HaTorah's nedarim. And not the way the halacha seems to be decided by the Mechaber in Yeridei and Hilchas Nedarim. Okay, says the Mishnah Berurah, Erev Yom Kippurim Bechlal. Erev Yom Kippur is included in the exception if the person says except for Yom Tov. Because the rule is that by Hilchas Nedarim we always follow the way people normally speak. And in the common speech, Mikra Yom Tov, Erev Yom Kippur is called a Yom Tov. This is the minig what the Rambam means to say over here is Kasfara Harishayna Hanal, that the halacha, the minig, follows the first opinion brought down by the Mechaber, V'loy Kedas HaRambam. Okay, now we go to Siv Beis. Hanoider lihis anois b'Shabbos v'Yom Tov v'Erev Yom Kippurim v'Chanukah uPurim. This case is slightly different. In the case of Sif Aleph, a person accepted upon himself to fast a series of Tanesim. Like I said, maybe he made a neder that he's going to fast the next 40 days. And then he realized that these days that you're not allowed to fast fall out in the series of Tanesim. Now the Mechaber is talking about a slightly different case. Instead of being Makabel Tainus on a series of Tanesim, a person was Makabel Tainus on that day specifically. He was specifically Makabel Tainus on a day that you're not allowed to fast. So the day before Chanukah, by Mincha, he was Makabel Tainus to fast on Chanukah. He was Makabel Tainus specifically for one of those days. The halach is exactly the same as Sif Aleph. If he made a neder, so the day before Chanukah, he said, Harei achilas machar alike kainim, the food tomorrow should be to me like a carbon. He was makabel to fast on Chanukah, b'l'shoy neder, so dinoi ki makabel love b'l'shoy neder. So then the halacha of a neder applies. He has to be mater neder, because his neder is in force without HaTorah's nedarim. And if he did it with a simple Kabbalas HaTainis, then it's as if he made a regular Kabbalas HaTainis, and his Kabbalas HaTainis is not chal. It's not in force on a day that you're not allowed to fast. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Katan Yod Aleph, what exactly is the chiddush of this sif? Says the Mishnah Berurah, Dinai Shavar, Ritzayna Lamar. What the Mechaber wants to say over here is the avshe perid beferish elu ayamim. The difference between Sif Beis and Sif Aleph is that in Sif Aleph, one of those days that you're not allowed to fast just happened to fall out during the series of Tanesim that I was makabel on myself. Over here, I was makabel Tanis specifically on the day that you're not allowed to fast. Still and all, if you made your Kabbalah in the format of a neder, it is chal. I might have thought that in this case, maybe even if I'm Makabel Tainus b'l'shoy neder, maybe the neder can't be chal. But no, the neder is chal. The neder chal, afal dvar mitzvah v'chanal. Because like we explained at the beginning of this year, a neder is chal even in the face of a mitzvah. Because what are you doing? You're asering the food on yourself. You're not asering yourself on the food. That you can't do because Yom Tov v'Omen Mehasinai. You already have a prior commitment that you must eat on Chanukah. You're not allowed to fast. But over here, I'm not trying to prohibit myself. I'm asering the food. I'm asering the chayfetz. And the chayfetz is not encumbered by a mitzvah. So therefore, the neder is chal. Now we go to Siv Gimel. Im nishba lehisanois kach v'kach yomim. Okay, now we're not talking anymore about a neder. Somebody made a shvuah. He swore that he's going to fast X amount of days, ve'eru behem yamim halalu. And again, he looks at the calendar and he sees that in the series of Tanesim that he made a shvuah to fast, there are days that you're not allowed to fast. Now, if you stop over here, so you would say to yourself, okay, Rabbi Weiss, let's apply the lumdus that we learned until now. We said, if it's a simple Kabbalas HaTainis, your Kabbalas HaTainis can't be chal, because you already have an Isser. You're not allowed to fast on those days. So your Kabbalas HaTainis cannot be madche the Isser. If you make a neder is chal. Because when you make a neder, you're answering the chayfetz. You're not answering yourself. Okay, how about a shvuah? A shvuah, you're answering yourself, not the chayfetz. So you would say to me, okay, Rabbi Weiss, if he made a shvuah, his shvuah should not be chal. The shvuah should not be enforced because he's mitzvah va'aymin mehar Sinai. He's already not allowed to fast on these days. So his shvuah is of rebuttal. Yes, that's true, but there's a caveat. Let's see what the Mechaber says. If somebody makes a shvuah to fast a certain amount of days, and now it falls out during those series of days that he's not allowed to fast, the shvuah is chal, bitam iser kailel, because of what's known as an iser kailel, an inclusive prohibition. Let's see what the Mishnah Berurah says over here. Nice cut in Yud Beis. Mitam iser kailel. Shekolal b'shvuasai gam yomim acherim. You see, the catch over here is that when he made his shvuah was taking force. He made a shvuah. I swear I'm going to fast for the next 40 days. Most of those 40 days are days that you're allowed to fast. So his shvuah is going to be in force on those days. Now, there's a minority of days included in those days that you're not allowed to fast. And the shvuah really would not be able to be chal on those days. If a person would make a shvuah, I swear I'm going to fast on Chanukah. That shvuah is not chal, because your shvuah can't be chal on Chanukah. But if you make the shvuah where you include in the shvuah days that you are allowed to fast and days that you're not allowed to fast, then since the shvuah is chal on the days that you are allowed to fast, it's also chal on the days that you are allowed to fast. That's the rule of an Isser Kailel. Shekol b'shvuasai gam yamim acherim, because he included in his shvuah other days as well, days that he is allowed to fast. The year lahatish shvuasai, he should make sure to go be matir his shvuah, because he's not allowed to fast on those days. So again, let's go to the beginning of Sif Gimel in the Mechaber. In Nishba lehisanis kach v'kach yamim ve'eru behem yamim alalu hashvuah chala aleim. The shvuah is enforced b'tam Isser Kailel. Aval, however, im nishba lehisanis b'Shabbos. If somebody makes a simple shvuah, he swears that he's going to fast specifically on Shabbos, or he swears to fast specifically on Yom Tov, beferish leichalol of shvuah. Then the shvuah cannot be chal. Dein shvuah chal al dvar mitzvah, because the shvuah cannot be chal in the face of a mitzvah. A person cannot make a shvuah. He can't swear that he's not going to take a lulav and esrog. He's mechuyev to take a lulav and esrog. He can make a neder. He can aser the lulav and esrog on himself. Then he can't take it. But he can't make a shvuah that he will not take a lulav and esrog. So too, a person cannot make a shvuah that he's not going to eat on Chanukah. He can't make a shvuah that he's going to fast on Chanukah. He's not allowed to fast on Chanukah. Okay? This person is actually going to get malchus for making a shvuah in vain. This is a shvuah shav. V'oichel, and he eats. Let's say a person he swears that he's not going to eat on Chanukah or Purim. Chala shvuah alav. I might have misspoke before. I don't remember exactly how I said it. If a person makes a shvuah that he's going to fast on Shabbos, it's not chal. If he makes a shvuah that he's going to fast on Chanukah or Purim, it is chal. Why? Because Chanukah and Purim are only an issa d'Rabbanan. A shvuah is chal on an issa d'Rabbanan. But Ramah says he should make sure to be matir his shvuah and he should not fast. Venirali and the Mechaber says it seems to him to hu adin l'Rosh Chodesh ve'erev Yom Kippurim she'einam elam d'Rabbanan. The Mechaber says that it seems to him that a shvuah should be chal on Rosh Chodesh or on Erev Yom Kippur. Somebody makes a shvuah to fast on Rosh Chodesh or on Erev Yom Kippur, the shvuah should be chal. She'einam elam d'Rabbanan, because the issur to fast on those days is only an issur d'Rabbanan. So the shvuah should be chal, and he should have to go be matir his shvuah. However, from the Rambam, it seems that Rosh Chodesh and Erev Yom Kippur are considered daraisa, and therefore the shvuah would not be chal. Says the Mishnah Berurah's Yud Gimel to Hadin l'Rosh Chodesh. He says that to him it would seem that should apply to Rosh Chodesh as well. Pirush shamasha also l'sanis be'emu d'Rabbanan. The issur to fast on Rosh Chodesh and Erev Yom Kippur is only an issur d'Rabbanan. V'lachein chala hashvuah, and therefore the shvuah should be chal. Yadalit Shem Shel Torah. The Rambam says that they're Daraisa. Vayim Magen Avram Shem Achriya De'erev Yom Kippurim Ha'Isur Le'Hisanis B'Hu Daraisa. The Magen Avram also concludes that the Isur to fast at Erev Yom Kippur is a Daraisa. Ava Rosh Chodesh Hu Darabanan, but on Rosh Chodesh is only a Darabanan. V'chein Das Agra B'Berurah the Rosh Chodesh Hu Darabanan. All right, like usual, I was overly ambitious. I thought that we would do most of the next page as well, but nope, not to be. So I'm going to stop over here. We'll see. It could be if I have time later, I'll record and post yet another share today to cover another page so we could make up some more lost ground. In any case, thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. I really have to start remembering to mention the cholim at the beginning of this year so we can have them in mind. But the schus of limud HaTorah should be a schus for Shlomo Zalman ben Mesher, Menachem Ari ben Dina Yehudis, and Yisrael Tzvi ben Ruchama Edel Roiza. They should all have Refuah Shalema. The Rabban Shem should send Refuahs, Yeshus, and Parnasa to all those in need. And we should be zeichet to see the Bias Gal Tzedek b'meher v'yameinu. Amen. Be well.